It was late October when John and Mary decided to escape their hectic lives in Charleston, West Virginia, for a weekend getaway. The city, with its constant noise and demands, had begun to feel like an unshakable weight on their shoulders. A quiet, peaceful retreat to the Appalachian Mountains seemed like the perfect remedy. The small town of Redridge, nestled deep in the mountains, was the kind of place that felt almost forgotten by time. The roads were narrow and winding, the kind that twisted and turned like a labyrinth through dense forests and rugged hills. The small town was far removed from the bustle of city life, an oasis of simplicity and solitude. The fall season had settled into the trees, casting the landscape in a tapestry of golden yellows and fiery reds, while the first whispers of winter teased the air with an icy bite. The couple rented a rustic cabin on the outskirts of Redridge, away from the main street and nestled near the forest's edge. It was the perfect spot to disconnect from the world. No cell service, no distractions, just them and the mountains. John, always the adventurer, had chosen the cabin, his eyes gleaming with excitement when he booked it. Mary, on the other hand, was a little more hesitant. She appreciated the peace, but something about the remote location unsettled her. Despite her reservations, Mary agreed, and they began the 2-hour drive from Charleston. The sky was overcast, a faint fog beginning to creep into the valleys as they climbed higher into the mountains. The landscape grew more isolated as they made their way through the winding roads, the trees forming a canopy above them like dark, gnarled fingers stretching toward the heavens. Their journey had been uneventful, until it wasn't. About 10 miles from Redridge, they came upon a narrow road that seemed to beckon them in a way they hadn't anticipated. The sign at the entrance, weathered by years of neglect, read, "Hollow Road, proceed with caution." The letters were chipped, the paint peeling away in places, but there was something about it that intrigued John. He glanced over at Mary, a mischievous smile playing at the corners of his lips. "Why not?" John said, his voice light with a sense of adventure. "It's the perfect road for a scenic drive." Mary shifted uncomfortably in her seat. The air around them felt heavier here, as though the road itself was filled with an ancient, unspoken energy. She didn't quite know why, but the name Hollow Road stirred something deep inside her, a quiet unease she couldn't shake. "It feels off," she said slowly, glancing at the sign again. "I don't know. The name, the way the sign looks, it just doesn't sit right." John chuckled, reaching for the wheel with a playful glint in his eye. "Come on, Mary. It's just a road. It's probably nothing." Against her better judgment, Mary relented. They turned onto Hollow Road, the gravel crunching beneath the tires as they began to move deeper into the dense forest. The trees crowded in around them, their branches intertwining above like twisted fingers, blocking out the last light of the day. The mist was thick now, swirling around the edges of the road in ghostly tendrils. The temperature seemed to drop and an eerie silence blanketed everything. The further they drove, the more it felt like the world around them had gone still. The wind was absent, the usual hum of nature silent. No birds, no rustling leaves, just the hum of their engine and the occasional squeak of the car's suspension. Mary's unease grew, but she didn't want to voice her discomfort again. John seemed completely at ease, his eyes scanning the road ahead with excitement. "Look at this," John murmured, his voice almost reverent as he glanced at the twisted trees lining the road. "It's like something out of a movie." Mary didn't share his enthusiasm. Her skin prickled, as if every fibre of her being was warning her to turn back. But John, ever the optimist, pressed on. The road stretched out before them, flat and desolate. The trees around them were no longer just trees. They had become gnarled, twisted shapes, like the skeletal hands of something ancient, reaching toward the sky. The further they travelled, the more oppressive the silence became. The fog was now so thick that the headlights barely cut through it, casting long, strange shadows on the path ahead. John ... Mary's voice trembled, and she clutched the armrest. Maybe we should turn around. I don't like this. John glanced over at her, his face still set in a smile, but there was something in his eyes that suggested he was becoming aware of the change in the atmosphere. He didn't want to admit it, but he too could feel the tension now. The air was thick with an unnatural cold, and the whispering wind that had once felt comforting now felt like a warning. "Just a little farther, okay?" John replied. "I promise there's something amazing at the end of this road. I know it."